We were set up as a result of the Morecambe Bay cockle picker disaster in 2004. Chinese cockle pickers were recruited by snakehead gangs to come to the UK. They were low-skilled migrant workers and they were put out on the sands of Morecambe Bay with no protective gear, and they drowned. 23 people drowned that night. That forced the UK government into looking at how we get our low-skilled migrant workers when they arrive in the UK, and what happens to them, and do they even get paid properly. So we were born as a licensing organisation to the food and drink industry, essentially. I have to say, when we first started, we were met with slight resistance from the major supermarkets, but now they understand that with a strict licensing process in place, people have to be compliant, and it creates a level playing field across the board. I'm going to be the first one to mention Brexit tonight, but wherever you need labour, you're going to find workers, and particularly vulnerable workers, that will be filling those gaps. So if we can move on to the next slide, which is a short video, and this is what people come to the UK to look for.
What do you see? There are thousands of slaves in the UK today. Modern slavery preys on the most vulnerable. And it starts with 3 little words. Want a job? Your heart flutters. It sounds too good to be true. But you want to earn money, escape abuse, educate your family. So you say yes. And then things change. You feel confused. There's less pay, more work, more control, until there's no pay, and you feel trapped. What do you see? The child asking you for money? Cleaning your car? The guy paving your drive? Or picking your strawberries? The woman working as a maid? Or in the massage parlour? It could be someone brought here, or the bloke next door. You won't see any chains, because modern slavery doesn't work like that. It takes men, women, and children, and makes them invisible. What do you see? Because if you can see them, there's a way out. Together, we can fight modern slavery. Go to www.unchosen.org.uk.
Unchosen are an excellent charity. They've got lots of videos that you can find online. And if you want to take this subject and teach other people, they're an excellent source, a free source to use. But that video shows us each and every one of those scenarios that's played out across London in each and every one of our lives that we will be looking at every day. The Gangmasters Labour Abuse Authority was born out of the Licensing Authority. And the reason for that was we were the first authority to go onto labour user sites and speak to workers with an independent interpreter. And what did that do? That gave them a voice. For the first time ever, somebody had a voice. Somebody had the ability and the tools to start to complain, and we could fight their corner for them. The next slide. So a very quick gallop through this. We've now got a Director of Labour Market Enforcement, but more importantly, we've now got powers under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. That enables our organisation to act far more robustly. We've got specialist officers called Labour Abuse Prevention Officers, and most of those are old ex-detectives like myself. We've got an extension of our remit to cover across the whole of the UK. So we've gone from looking at the food and drink industry with about 500,000 workers across the whole labour industry, which is about just over 10 million workers. So you can imagine that's a very big task, and we've doubled in size, but we're only 120 people, okay? One of the main messages I want to get across to you today, that this subject, this heinous crime, you'll only be able to get away with it if nobody talks about it. And what we want you to do is work in partnership to share that information. Because if you think that something's going on, you have to tell someone. I would much rather you do something rather than nothing, as a message that runs through this towards the end. Most importantly, we've got a custodial sentence now. So whereas before, if I paint the picture of a cleaner that comes to London, she's low skilled, she's been given a job cleaning offices, and the boss that's given her the job has sort of said, boy, you've got to pay me for work. So she gives him £200. That's just so that she can work. And that payment for those 5 nights, 6 nights a week, is promised but never actually arrives. And when she goes to ask for the money that she's actually owed at the end of a few weeks, he tells her to get lost. Up until now, she's not had a voice that she could go to. She's not had a body that she could go to. But now we work with the National Minimum Wage team, HMRC, and we can actually work to get that money back for that individual. So that's just a small snapshot, okay? But more importantly, it allows us to do something about repeat labour market offenders, those rogue businesses that shut down and phoenix up again with the same people, but owing their workers money. So what do you know about modern slavery? Now, I know Angela's going to fill in the gaps with the indicators of modern slavery. Does it happen in London? If we can have the next slide. One message I want to get across to you today is slavery is as a result of organised criminality. Okay? It's high profits, but mainly it's low risk. And why is it low risk? Because those workers will never complain. What I'd like you to understand is that people are only ever trafficked for financial gain. It's all about money. And if I can take you back to a story when I was a police officer, if you were given information that there was a car that was being driven and there were people with drugs, and the drugs were in the vehicle would be stopped, the perpetrator taken out of the vehicle, and the drugs destroyed. And the same would go if they were running guns. If there were guns in the boot of the vehicle, the bad guy would be taken out of the vehicle and the guns decommissioned. What about the minibus on its way to work with 8 to 12 people in it? That minibus, with each and every one of those workers, will give me, as the bad guy, a much longer income than ever the drugs or the guns will. And that's why we need to look a little bit more deeply at where our workers are, where they are, and if they're being paid. This is why it's such a successful crime. Because organised criminality is always one step ahead. We've got the Modern Slavery Act, which I'm going to gallop through, but whatever you may think of Theresa May, she pushed through the Modern Slavery Act, and we are the envy. We're one of the first countries in the world to have this. And what it's done is it's given us the ability to consolidate all that existing legislation, but more importantly, what it's done, it's got perpetrators face sentencing to life imprisonment. That's just how serious this crime is taken. Life imprisonment, okay? But more importantly, it's given us a statutory defence for victims. What do you do if you've been given a job in the UK or promised a job, but you're no good to me if you've been working all day? I don't want you sitting on a sofa at night not earning me any money. I want you out there doing something else. So I'm either going to put you, I don't know, looking after a cannabis farm in a domestic house. The snow's coming tomorrow. When you go back to your homes and tomorrow night, the roof without the snow on the top will probably be the local cannabis farm. If the windows are boarded up, if there's a sound of a buzzing in generators, but those workers that have been laid, they have to lay in there on a mattress on the floor and look after that cannabis yield. They've got no choice in that. But now, under the Modern Slavery Act, they've got a statutory defence. And the same goes for the pickpockets in the London, round the London theatres at night. They've been sent out in teams. They've got no choice, oftentimes. They have to obey what their gangmaster tells them. So we've now got a statutory defence for those victims who've been criminalised, okay? And I haven't got time to go into the powers that we've now got at sea, but what I would like you to think quickly about is if you're a domestic worker and you're stuck in a house in London, you're not visible. What are you going to do if you're out at sea and the master of the ship has got your ID? You haven't got a voice there either. So it's all these elements to be aware of. We've already covered that with the Bishop beforehand. Right, emerging areas and trends. This is not just London, this is UK-wide, but in London particularly, the Gangmasters Labour Abuse Authority is particularly concerned about construction. Why construction? Why would construction be such a draw? Anybody?
Dangerous.
Sorry?
Dangerous.
It's dangerous, but moreover, the way that the construction industry is run is on short-term contracts. So many different contracts that nobody really knows who their employer is. The basis and the information that we have, there are a lot of Polish workers, there's a lot of Romanian workers that get employed on our construction sites. You've only got to walk around London to see how busy our construction industry is. Those workers will be promised work, they will be promised pay, but that pay never ever arrives. A couple of weeks, not much money, the boss hasn't paid me, I'm sorry, but come the third week, they may be given a small amount of money, £50. Great, I've got £50, the other money will be coming. It never arrives. And by the time the end of the contract comes and the worker phones up the only mobile number they've been given, guess what? That phone number is unobtainable. That is the methodology. But it's not only just high-end modern slavery, it's that low level, not being paid overtime, not being paid wages correctly, never being paid annual leave because they're encouraged to be employed as self-employed workers. If we look at cleaning and hospitality, the majority of cleaners that have come into the UK are Eastern European women. Again, no voice, like the scenario I described before. So we look at food and catering and car washes. I'm going to go through these in a little bit more detail. Nail bars, ladies, think about this. And the care sector, because we don't often care for our old people. So our car washes, and these figures are just slightly out of date, and the Clear Initiative have actually got an app, which I think is as part of their desk over there. 24,000 car washes in the UK, of which 4,000 are mechanical. There's a lot of unregulated car washes. Who, hands up, let's be honest here, we're in church, how many of you use car washes? Very brave, thank you. Right. You've only got to do the numbers to understand that the figures just don't add up. If you always pay the same individual every time your car's cleaned, if going back, and because I'm quite elderly, if you go back about 6 or 7 years, you would have paid about £30 to have your car valeted. They would do a very good job now for about £13 or £15. But there's several men around that vehicle all at the same time. What are they wearing? Are they wearing jeans and trainers? The National Health Service in London have said they've had an increased reporting, higher reporting of foot rot, because these individuals never get the chance to dry off. That's the reality of car washes, and they're mainly Romanian in London, that's our information, and they're run by Albanian or Kosovan nationals. Wherever there's a car wash, there's big business. But I always say with a car wash, there's got to have water and it's got to have electricity. Okay, so maybe that's a thing for councils to think about in the future. Construction we've covered, so we'll go on to the next one. Nail bars. Ladies, have I got any honest nail bar users? Have I got any hands up for nail bars? Okay. We've looked at nail bars, along with our partner agencies and the police, and they are mainly a vehicle for money laundering. If you look at these stats just for Vietnamese nail bars, 55,000 in the UK with 20,000 shops, mainly in London. Okay. Now I come from a very, very sleepy village on the Kent coast, The average age is about 70. It suits me fine. The shops finish and close on a Wednesday afternoon. But we've got 3 nail bars, okay? Now, it's always about money, but what I think there's a more sinister thing here, and as I said earlier, you're no good to me if you're working in a nail bar all day. I want you doing something in the evening. And oftentimes, from nail bars and young, vulnerable women, they get exploited for sexual exploitation. They don't have a voice, okay? And what I want you to do is if you go into a nail bar and something's not right, I want you to tell either an organisation like mine or the Modern Slavery Act or the Modern Slavery Helpline. Tell somebody about it. Because if you don't tell somebody, we can't help. We can't help. The traveller communities. How many people have been tempted by the man and they feel they're quite smart, they turn up and they're going to block pave your drive. They're going to sort your roofing out, yeah? We'll do you a good price. What about the people that actually turn up to do the job? Do you look closely at those individuals, yeah? Is that individual or those individuals constantly being told what to do? They don't have any eye contact with you. Angela will go through those indicators a bit more later on. But it's for you to start thinking a little bit outside the box. If it's very, very cheap, there's a reason it's cheap, okay? And it's cheap because somebody is exploiting a vulnerable person. And while we're on traveller communities, the most information or the most recent intelligence we have is a lot of young men are recruited from homeless shelters to do this kind of work. They're promised money, they're promised accommodation. Yeah, they're given accommodation. But if they've come with already mental health problems or drink and drug abuse, they're kept subjugated with more drink, with more drugs, and they're put to use working for traveller communities and then dropped off at another homeless shelter. What we'd like to do is get all the churches and the homeless shelters all talking to each other, because that's not happening at the moment. And even in that small piece of work, we can make a difference working together. And the care sector, we're notoriously bad at looking after our elderly, okay? Huge amounts of workers come into the care sector, again, low-skilled migrant labour. The Quality Care Commission will go around each and every one of the hospitals and care homes and check that the establishment's being run correctly, but nobody's looking at the workers. Nobody's actually asking the workers, have you been paid? How much do you get paid an hour? Do you have any annual leave? Those 3 vital questions. And then the first guiding question is, did you have to pay for this job? Yeah? Because if somebody's had to pay for work, 9 times out of 10, their accommodation will follow along with it as well. And whoever controls the accommodation will control the worker. And that's our experience from the investigations that we've had so far. So, be on the lookout. If you've got elderly people that you're in care homes with, have a look at the staff. How am I doing for time? Oh, okay. Next one. So the hotel industry, particularly in London, Filipino workers will have paid for work because that's what's expected in the Philippines. But again, they can't speak the language. Now, if you can't speak the language, you can't complain that there's something wrong, okay? And if you come from an environment, if you come from a country where you're naturally mistrustful of authority, are you going to flag up that there's a problem? Probably not. So this is where the church and the wider community can facilitate something to happen. Next one. So how many types of exploitation are there? Well, here we go. And I think, are you covering this, Angela? These elements? Good, what I want you to look at is each and every one of those headings is the ability to make money out of an individual. Okay? Each and every one of those is the ability to make money. It's about organised crime groups. It's about organised crime groups that will exploit those vulnerable people because they can get away with it. Right? How are they recruited? Usually through a family member. And if we're talking about large Romanian or Bulgarian families, they are huge. The family numbers are huge, and that exploitative process can start within that larger family community. They can be an acquaintance, a simple stranger. Often they're picked because they're vulnerable, they may even be on the streets or without work in their home country. Would you like a job in the UK? Yes, please. You can earn up to £250 a week in the UK. That's more money than they're ever going to know. What we find with a lot of workers, where it's been low-level exploitation, have actually said, you know what, I knew I was being conned, but it's far better than being at home. That does not make it right, okay? And finally, I want you to think about what might make people vulnerable to trafficking. It's that lack of opportunity, that poverty driver. We're very, very fortunate sitting in this room tonight. But if we were in real poverty, or we were in real fear, or we were from an area where there's much conflict, and you've got no choice and you want to look after your family, would you accept or be forced or coerced into a job in the UK? You probably would, you know. Okay? And that's what we've got to be mindful of. Especially if they're vulnerable for drug and alcohol dependence, and especially if there's trafficking endemic in the area. I've actually dealt with Romanian girls who have actually been rescued, they've gone into the NRM system, they've gone home, only to be re-trafficked. And that thought is, do you know what? It might be better this time. But wherever there are people that are going to seek to make money out of vulnerable people, they will. And we've got to stop that. Next slide. Okay, this is a recent operation that we had in London. These are construction workers. It was identified through a scam that they weren't being paid properly, they were using false passes. There were 22 people living in this one house. And what I also want you to understand is that when I was talking about car washes earlier, and when I talk about agriculture, or if I talk about construction or any of those other industries, each and every one of those workers is easily interchangeable into different sectors. They don't always just stay within the same sector, okay? We only had success with that operation because we were told, we were given the information, and that's what I would like you to try and do. Next one. So if you think someone's a victim of slavery, what I would never want you to do is try and make a formal statement. The CLUA training is very, very good. So what I want you to do is just use your own judgment, but make that telephone call. Tell somebody about it. And I think, Angela, I think you're the central point of contact for that. I think if I could say that this PowerPoint will be made available via your organisation. And I think if we move on, I think that's it, is it? The video. I've got a very, very quick video as to the statistics for the GLA and the numbers that we've been dealing with just recently. I'm sorry about the music, it's a bit frantic, isn't it? But we've all got a part to play in this, and we can't as an organisation do it alone. Andrew will have my details, and if you ever want to contact me, please do. But let's go out with a fresh pair of eyes and have a real good look around at what's around us. And you never know, you can give someone that voice and that chance to get out of this environment. Thank you very much.